Yo, one of the greatest mentor relationships in hip-hop history just turned into a battlefield, and the receipts go back almost 2 decades. We're not talking about a random beef that popped off overnight. We're talking about a slow burn implosion between two of the biggest names the culture has ever produced. And when you see the full timeline laid out, man, it will change the way you understand everything that's happening right now. Because one of these men spent years calling the other a mentor, a big brother, one of the greatest relationships in his life. And now he's saying he could never learn a thing from him. That's not beef. That's a betrayal wearing a fitted cap. And HOV? HOV sitting somewhere right now like he doesn't even have to address it, and that energy alone is the most disrespectful thing he could possibly do. Drop your thoughts in the comments, hit like, and subscribe. Let's get into it. Sean Corey Carter, Jay-Z, Hoviv himself, delivered a freestyle at the Roots picnic in 2025 that sent shockwaves through the culture. The line that broke the internet? I just looked up to Hoviv. I never looked up to them. Directed, allegedly, at the new generation of rap royalty, specifically Aubrey Drake Graham, Drizzy, the Six God himself. This wasn't a diss track with a title. It wasn't a press run. It was a freestyle, casual, almost throwaway, which somehow made it hit harder than a 6-minute studio record. And Drake? Drake had already been laying groundwork for months, dropping shots on Iceman on Janet, name-checking Jay indirectly, pulling at threads. So when HOV stepped to that mic at the Roots picnic, it wasn't random. That was a response with a timestamp. And here's what nobody's really asking yet. How did two men who publicly called each other family end up here? Stay with me because the answer goes all the way back to 2009. Alright y'all, let's pull up the actual receipts because this story is built on documented moments, and I need you to see them laid out chronologically so you understand how deep this goes. We start in 2009. Drake drops So Far Gone, first as a free mixtape online, then commercially as an EP. On a track called Fear, Drake opens his verse with what I can only describe as genuine, almost vulnerable admiration. He says, "Don't take this the wrong way, but I never cry when Pac died, but I probably will when Hoviv does." Yo, when I first heard that line, I had to pause. That's not just a bar. That's a confession. That's a young artist telling you who his North Star is. He's not name-dropping for clout. He's saying this man's existence means something to me on a personal level. That's real. And looking back at it now, knowing where we ended up, man, that line hits different. Then in 2009, same year, Drake hops on Jay's Blueprint 3, appearing on the hook for Off That. And look, I'ma be honest with y'all, Off That was not the moment either of them needed. That song was disappointing. Hip-hop was hyped about a Drake and Jay collab, and what we got was underwhelming. But the significance isn't the song quality, the significance is the access. Jay put Drake on Blueprint 3. That is a cosign of the highest order. At that same time, Cole, who was signed directly to Jay's Roc Nation, was also on Blueprint 3 on A Star's Born. And reportedly, according to Jay, Cole's own account in the Inevitable audio series with Eve and Scott Laser, Jay actually embarrassed Cole during his debut sessions by turning to Drake and saying, "Yo, give him a hit record."
Think about that.
Cole is your signee, and you're going to Drake for hits. That's how much Jay believed in Drake's magic in 2009. That detail, right there, tells you everything about the pedestal HOV put Drizzy on. Fast forward to 2010. Drake's major label debut, Thank Me Later, drops. And we get Light Up, another Jay feature, but this time it was different. This wasn't pop. This wasn't trying to make radio. Jay comes on Light Up and he's rapping. He's giving Drake big homie advice in real time on wax. And the bars he drops are prophetic. He says, "Drake, here's how they're going to come at you with silly rap feuds trying to distract you in disguise in the form of a favor. The Barzini meeting. Watch for the traitors." Yo, when I heard that line in the context of what's happening now, I had to rewind it 3 times. Jay is literally using a Godfather reference to warn Drake about the exact type of chess that gets played at the top level. The Barzini meeting, for those who haven't seen The Godfather, and please watch it, greatest film ever made, is the moment where Michael Corleone figures out who's been working against him by watching who shows up to a particular meeting. It's a loyalty test disguised as a friendly gesture. Jay's telling Drake, "Watch who comes to you smiling." And now in 2025, Drake reportedly believes Jay is one of the people who chose a side against him in the Kendrick situation. The Barzini meeting indeed. But on that same album, Thank Me Later, there's a track called Thank Me Now, and Drake drops a bar that in hindsight is almost eerie. He says, "I could relate to kids going straight to the league when they recognize that you got what it takes to succeed. And that's around the same time your idols become your rivals. You make friends with Mike, but you got to AI them for your survival." When I heard this, I was like, NH. He wrote this while he was on an album with Jay. Was he already thinking about Jay when he wrote this? The AI and Mike Jordan reference. Allen Iverson crossing up Michael Jordan. The young phenom humbling the GOAT. That's a specific image to choose, man. Specific. Maybe it's just general wisdom from a young artist with the self-awareness to know competition is coming. Or maybe Drake already knew, even at the beginning, that one day he'd have to cross up the very man who mentored him. Prophetic or calculated? You decide. Now in 2013, Drake sitting down with Angie Martinez on Hot 97, same day nothing was the same drops. And in reference to Jay, Drake says, and this is a direct quote, "It's one of the strongest relationships, if not the strongest relationship with any rapper that I have. He's just like an incredible mentor to me. I'll forever be looking up to him." Y'all. I'll forever be looking up to him. In 2013, Drake says he'll forever be looking up to Jay-Z. And now in 2025, Jay drops a freestyle line saying, "I just looked up to Hovive. I never looked up to them." He's talking back to Drake's own words. That's a callback across 12 years. That's not accidental. That's intentional disrespect with a bibliography. Also in 2013, Pound Cake comes out. Off Nothing was the same, and this is the collaboration where you can feel the dynamic shift starting. Jay's on the track and he says, "I had Benzes before you had braces." And look, on the surface it's a flex. But in context, that's a subtle reminder of hierarchy. I was here before you were old enough to drive. And then on the Paris Morton music portion of the same track, Drake responds to that energy, maybe not directly at Jay, but the timing is impossible to ignore. He says, "I'm the big homie. They still trying to little bro me, dog. Like I should fall in line. Like I should alert when I'm about to drop something crazy and not say I'm the greatest of my generation." He's pushing back. He's saying, "Don't little bro me." The tension is right there, embedded in the same song, back to back. Then in a Rolling Stone interview in February 2014, Drake, in quotes that were allegedly published without his consent or which he believed were off the record, takes a shot at Jay's art world phase, saying something to the effect that HOV can't drop bars without multiple art references and calling the whole rap art world thing corny. Now look, whether Drake meant for that to go public or not, it went public. And Jay? Jay responded almost immediately on We Made It with Jay Electronica, saying, "I'm sorry, Miss Drizzy, for so much art talk. Silly me rapping about the things that I bought while these rappers rap about guns they ain't shot, and a bunch of silly things they ain't got. The Miss Drizzy is wild to me. That's a little petty." But the substance of the response, "I'm rapping about what I actually own, what I actually have," that's Jay saying my authenticity is real and yours might not be. That's not nothing. And Drake fires right back on draft day in April 2014. He says, "Just hits, no misses. That's for the married folk." Married folk. Jay-Z is married to Beyoncé. That's a shot. A subtle one, but a shot. And then later on the same track he adds, "We all do it for the art, so I can never hate though." Half apology, half, "I heard you." They are talking to each other on record, back and forth, using songs as text messages, and the whole culture is just watching like a tennis match. By April 2014, Jay's on DJ Khaled's They Don't Love You No More, and he says, "Wrong sport, boy. You know you soft as a lacrosse team." Now, interesting thing here, in the 2025 Roots Picnic freestyle, Jay says, "Wrong chart, champ." The phrasing is slightly different, but the DNA? That's from 2014. Jay's been filing these away. Then 2016 comes, and Drake drops Summer 16. He says, "I used to want to be on Rockefeller, then I turned into Jay." That line right there is the pivot. That's the moment Drake stops calling Jay his mentor and starts calling himself his equal. And Jay responds on DJ Khaled's I Got the Keys with, "To you own your own, you can't be free. To you're on your own, you can't be me." How we still slaves in 2016. The slaves in 2016 and the summer 16, you hear how those line up? They are in a full conversation at this point, and nobody seems to want to call it what it is. Now y'all, here's where it gets really interesting, because the when of all this matters as much as the what. Let me show you the connections that get missed when people only look at individual moments. The Blueprint 3 collab and the J. Cole embarrassment? Those happened in the same window. Jay puts Drake on his album and turns to Drake in front of his own signed artist to ask for a hit. That positioning is intentional. Jay was establishing Drake's value while simultaneously, perhaps unintentionally, diminishing Cole's in the same room. Think about the industry message that sends. Drake isn't just an artist, he's a resource. He's someone even Jay-Z leans on creatively. That's a different kind of cosign. That's not just, I like your music. That's, your judgment is worth more than my own signees. Cole never forgot that, allegedly. And Drake? Drake absorbed that energy. He understood what it meant. Then the pound cake timeline is crucial, and people keep sleeping on it. Drake heard a Jay record, reportedly for Magna Carta Holy Grail, and had the audacity to ask Jay, not just for the song, but for the a cappella, because he didn't like the beat. Think about who asks Jay-Z for their a cappella and then says, "I'll build something better around your voice." That's not a fan move. That's a producer's move. That's a power move dressed up in politeness. And Jay gave it to him. Jay told him, "I never do this." But he did it for Drake. And then Drake's producer Noah built a new beat, and Drake said the beat brought Jay's verses back to life, and Jay almost wanted the song back. They're not just colleagues at this point. They're genuinely, creatively intertwined, which makes the eventual falling out more devastating. Now here's the timing detail that nobody is connecting. The Roots Picnic freestyle happens in 2025. But Roc Nation's selection of Kendrick Lamar for the 2025 Super Bowl happened before the freestyle. Think about the sequence. Drake files his lawsuit against UMG, citing damages from the promotion of Not Like Us. In that legal framework, Drake is essentially building a case that the industry conspired against him. Roc Nation controls the Super Bowl halftime show. Roc Nation is Jay-Z's company. Kendrick performs Not Like Us, the song directly aimed at Drake, on one of the most-watched stages in American television history. And then Jay drops a Roots Picnic freestyle with I Never Looked Up to Them. Y'all didn't catch this though. The freestyle wasn't the opening shot. The freestyle was the confirmation of a side being taken. Drake had already felt it. The freestyle just said it out loud. And then there's the pop-style situation in 2016 that got buried. Drake had a record with Kanye, and Kanye reportedly suggested bringing Jay in. Jay records a verse. And then, the verse gets cut. Drake says it was creative reasons. But the tension in that period between Drake and Jay was already building via the Summer 16, and I Got the Keys back and forth. So was the cut verse a creative call, or an atmosphere call? The timing of that mid-2016, right in the middle of their most intense coded back and forth, tells you something about where the relationship actually was behind the scenes versus what they were saying in interviews. Also important to note, while Drake was giving reverent quotes to Angie Martinez in 2013 about Jay being his greatest relationship, Jay was giving an Elliott Wilson interview saying, "I'm sure Cole thinks his album is better than mine, and I'm cool with that. He's supposed to. Even with Drake, we have a great relationship." That even with Drake, something about the phrasing of that. Even with Drake. Like Drake's the wild card. Like Drake's the one who needs to be included at the end of a sentence that was already going somewhere else. Small thing. But I notice small things. And then Lil Wayne and Birdman's reaction to the Super Bowl Kendrick choice. That added another layer to this. Wayne, a New Orleans legend, was reportedly passed over for the Super Bowl stage in his home city. And Jay's company made that call. Drake, who came up in the Young Money ecosystem, who has ties to Wayne, who has celebrated Wayne as an influence, suddenly Jay isn't just in conflict with Drake. Jay is seemingly in conflict with an entire generational wave. The pattern goes beyond just Jay and Drake. It's structural. And Drake, allegedly, feels like the structure has been working against him. That's a different kind of grievance than just a rap beef. That's institutional. Let me put on the lab coat for a second, because there are specific lines and moments in this timeline that reveal way more than they appear to on the surface. We're going in close. First, Jay's 2025 Roots Picnic freestyle line. I just looked up to Hoviv. I never looked up to them. Now, most people are analyzing this as Jay talking about Drake and the young generation. But look at the structure of that line. He doesn't say they looked up to me. He says I looked up to Hoviv. He's literally referring to himself in the third person as the standard. He's not just saying Drake admired him. He's saying Drake admired an icon, and Jay is that icon, and the icon doesn't owe the admirer anything. It's a total inversion of the relationship dynamic. It reframes Jay not as Drake's mentor, but as an unreachable myth that Drake merely aspired toward. That's psychological. That's not just a diss. That's a status reassignment in 14 words. Now check this. Nobody's really talking about this, but the Angie Martinez 2013 Drake quote, "I'll forever be looking up to him," and Jay's 2025 freestyle, "I never looked up to them," are almost mirror images of each other. Drake uses first person to express reverence upward. Jay uses first person to deny that reverence ever flowed downward. One sentence erases 12 years of the other. That's either the coldest callback in rap history or one of the greatest coincidences. I don't believe in coincidences at this level. Second forensic point. Drake's 2010 lyric, "Your idols become your rivals. You make friends with Mike, but you got to AI them for your survival." The Allen Iverson and Michael Jordan reference is specific for a reason. In that famous crossover, AI doesn't destroy Mike. AI doesn't end Mike's career. What AI does is embarrass Mike momentarily on a play, and then the game continues. Mike's still Mike. The GOAT status is undisturbed. But the moment happened, the young guy proved he could do it. That's the blueprint Drake seemed to be following. Not annihilation, punctuation. A moment that says I can compete on this level. But here's the layer underneath that layer. In that real basketball story, Iverson and Jordan actually had a deep mutual respect. Iverson famously called Jordan the greatest ever. The beef was competitive, not personal. Drake may have been mapping that rivalry with respect. The problem is Jay apparently read it differently. Third, Jay's 2014 line on "We Made It." "Silly me rapping about the things that I bought while these rappers rap about guns they ain't shot." The framing is fascinating because Jay is defending art references by attacking authenticity. He's not saying, "I have better taste than you." He's saying, "At least what I rap about is real." That is a very specific dig at an artist who built his early brand on vulnerability and honest storytelling. Drake built his lane on rapping about his real life, emotions, relationships, contradictions. Jay is essentially suggesting Drake's entire authenticity thesis is compromised. That's not about art. That's about character. And if Drake caught that subtext, and Drake catches everything, that would explain why the simmering got hotter after 2014. Now let's talk about how the media has been handling this, because the framing across outlets tells you something interesting about how the culture wants to see this story versus what the story actually is. Complex and Hip Hop DX largely framed the Roots Picnic freestyle moment as Jay-Z making a general statement about generational respect, a veteran asserting his place in history, not necessarily a targeted diss at Drake specifically. Their angle pushed a narrative of HOV being above the fray, untouchable, speaking from a Mount Olympus perspective. That framing served a particular purpose. It protects Jay's brand as the elder statesman who doesn't dirty his hands in petty beef. XXL and some of the more street-adjacent outlets framed it differently. They went direct. They pointed at Drake at the lawsuit at the Super Bowl and said this is personal. Their angle was more confrontational and honestly more honest about what was actually happening on the ground level of the culture. Now some people are claiming this whole Jay-Drake tension is overstated. That Jay's freestyle was ambiguous, that Drake's shots were similarly ambiguous, and that the media and fans are projecting a beef onto a relationship that's just evolved naturally. These are the same people who said the Meek Mill situation wasn't really beef until it clearly was. The argument for ambiguity falls apart the moment you look at the receipts we just laid out. The Miss Drizzy line, the Summer 16 response, the Wrong Sport line, the Super Bowl choice, the Iceman bars. At some point, ambiguity becomes a choice. And choosing to be ambiguous about Drake specifically, repeatedly over years, is itself a statement. The media also largely failed to connect the Jay-GQ interview from 2026 to the full picture. When Jay told Fraser Thompson, "What do I care about them two guys battling? I'm Jay-Z," the outlets ran that as Jay being above it. But when you stack it against the years of coded back and forth we just walked through, that "I'm Jay-Z" doesn't sound like elevation. It sounds like the final form of the same hierarchy that started with, "I had Benzes before you had braces." It's the same message, "I am above you," just without the pretense of mentorship wrapping it anymore. The media missed that through line. We didn't. Here's what the mainstream narrative on this is. Two rap legends had a complicated mentor-protégé relationship that eventually evolved into rivalry as Drake became a generational force. Natural cycle. Respect still there. Friendly competition. The culture grows. That's the sanitized version. Here's what they won't tell you. This isn't about rap evolution. This is about institutional power and what happens when an artist gets big enough to threaten not just a legacy, but an infrastructure. Jay-Z isn't just a rapper. He's Roc Nation. He's a sports agency. He's an NFL partner. He's a Super Bowl decision-maker. He is the institution. And Drake, man, Drake in his prime wasn't just a rapper either. He was the most streamed artist on the planet. He moved culture. He made cities relevant. He launched careers. He had the kind of cultural gravitational pull that you can't manufacture and you can't buy. Two institutions don't share the same sky without friction. And here's the thing nobody wants to say. The Kendrick beef didn't create the Jay-Drake problem. The Kendrick beef just handed the institution a reason to move against Drake openly. Think about this. Roc Nation's involvement in the Super Bowl gave Jay genuine leverage over who gets the biggest stage in American entertainment for that year. Kendrick was having a monster year. Jay said so himself in the GQ piece. That's true. But Kendrick also happened to be the artist who most cleanly represented the counter-narrative to Drake's dominance. And Jay, a man who has navigated industry politics at the highest level for 30 years, chose that moment to give that artist that stage. Allegedly. And then when pressed, "I'm Jay-Z. What's that got to do with me?" That response is not the response of a man who doesn't understand optics. That's the response of a man who knows exactly what the optics are and has decided he doesn't need to address them. That's power speaking. And Drake, who built his career on emotional intelligence and reading rooms, he read that room. He read it loud. Here's the real story they won't put on the news. What we're watching is the old guard exercising its structural advantage against a new guard that got too big, too fast, too independently. Drake never needed Jay's label. Never needed Jay's infrastructure. Built his own empire at OVO. That independence, which should theoretically be celebrated in hip-hop culture, actually represented a threat to the ecosystem Jay built. Because if Drake succeeds without Roc Nation, without the traditional gatekeeper structure, then the gatekeepers lose relevance. And relevance in this industry is currency. So when the Kendrick situation arose, an organic cultural moment, the institutional interest and the cultural interest happened to align. And Drake allegedly found himself on the wrong side of both simultaneously. The Barzini meeting, man. Jay literally warned Drake about this on Light Up in 2010. He said, "Watch for the traitors. They come disguised as favors." And now Drake allegedly believes the greatest favor Jay ever did him, the mentorship, the cosigns, the pound cake a cappella, the notes after Take Care, was also the setup. The relationship that gave Drake access to the highest levels of the game was the same relationship that, when it soured, gave the institution maximum leverage over him. That is not coincidence. That's how power works. And that is the truth they won't put on the news. And look, Drake is not innocent in this either, let's be real. His shots at Jay have gotten increasingly personal. The $500K not dinner, "I could never learn nothing from none of y'all" line is not competitive rap bravado. That's a man burning a bridge that helped build him. The jig is up reference. The OG's shot on Janet, Drake went from, "I'll forever be looking up to him," to essentially dismissing an entire generation of rap elders that includes the man who put him on Blueprint 3. That's not growth. That's grievance talking. And grievance at that level in public tends to cost you. Ask anyone who's ever publicly broken from a powerful mentor in any industry. The puppet strings are showing on both sides. Jay uses his institutional power to shape narratives and stages. Drake uses his streaming dominance and emotional audience connection to fight back. But here's the thing, streaming numbers don't protect you from the Super Bowl. And Super Bowl access doesn't protect you from being the most played artist on earth. They're fighting with different weapons in different arenas, and neither weapon fully cancels out the other. That's why this isn't over. And that is the truth they won't put on the news. So, where does this go from here? Let me tell you exactly what's coming, and mark my words on all three of these. Scenario 1, the most likely outcome. Drake is going to let the lawsuit do the talking. He's not going to drop a direct Jay diss track. That's not his play right now. The legal route is the diss track. Every deposition, every court filing, every mention of Roc Nation and the Super Bowl in that UMG lawsuit is a very expensive, very public shot. And when that case develops, when the discovery phase potentially pulls back curtains on how the Super Bowl decision was made and what conversations happened between label executives and Jay's camp, that's going to generate headlines that no freestyle can compete with. Jay is going to find himself in the uncomfortable position of having his business decisions examined as alleged industry manipulation in a federal lawsuit. And I'm Jay-Z is not going to land the same way in a deposition room as it does in a GQ profile. Drake wins the narrative war in this scenario without ever having to rap a single bar about Jay directly. Scenario 2. Jay drops something. Not a direct response. HOV doesn't do direct responses to people he doesn't consider peers. But watch for another coded shot, another colored feature, another interview that happens to drop just days after a major Drake news cycle. Jay's been doing this for years. We just documented it. He's going to stay in his lane publicly while making sure the culture knows exactly where he stands. If that coded shot lands in a high-profile moment, a major feature, a Beyoncé album track, another freestyle, then Drake is going to face a choice. Escalate to full beef and risk becoming the guy who tried to go to war with Jay-Z, or absorb the hit and look like he can't respond. Neither option is clean for him. Jay wins atmospherically in this scenario. Scenario 3. The cultural shockwave. 5 years from now, this moment gets remembered as the fracture point that exposed the generational infrastructure conflict inside hip-hop. Not just Jay and Drake. Not just Kendrick and Drake. But the broader question of who controls the stages, the narratives, the algorithms, the cosigns. When you have the most streamed artist of his generation publicly alleging in a lawsuit that the industry conspired against him, and when the person most implicated in that alleged conspiracy is the man who controls the Super Bowl halftime show and runs one of the most powerful management companies in music, that is a structural reckoning. And the culture is going to have to decide, do you trust the institution or the artist? Do you believe the gatekeeper or the guy saying the gate was closed on purpose? That conversation is already starting, and it's only going to get louder. Whatever happens, one thing is already decided. The moment Jay said, "I never looked up to them," and Drake said, "I could never learn nothing from none of y'all," the mentorship was officially buried. You can't unsay that. The relationship that started with Drake crying over Jay's legacy on a 2009 track ended with both men publicly erasing the debt. And in hip-hop, when legends erase each other's debts publicly, somebody's legacy takes the hit. Drake already lost the moment this started. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed uncovering the real story, smash that like button and hit subscribe so you never miss when we expose what everyone else is too scared to say. Ring that bell for notifications. And if you want more truth bombs like this, click on one of these videos next. Trust me, you'll want to see what we found.